Thank you for joining me here today. I want to talk about something that feels counterintuitive, maybe even a little uncomfortable, the idea that you don't need anyone. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, don't we all need people? Don't relationships make life meaningful? And I'll tell you, yes, they absolutely do. But what I'm talking about is deeper than that. When I say you don't need anyone, I'm talking about the part of us that can stand on its own. That inner core that isn't reliant on approval, external validation, or someone else's affirmation. I'm talking about the strength that already lives inside us, the strength that we often overlook because we're so busy reaching out for someone else's. Too often, we go through life with this quiet, gnawing feeling that we're not quite complete, that we're not enough as we are. We feel like we need someone else to fill in the gaps, to complete us, or to prop us up. And we end up putting parts of ourselves on hold, waiting for that perfect partner, friend, or mentor to come along and make us whole. But here's the truth, that wholeness isn't something that someone else can deliver. It's not a gift from someone outside of us. It's something we have to cultivate from within. This doesn't mean we go through life alone or that we don't lean on others when we need to. No, that's not the point. What this means is that we don't need someone else to feel valuable. We don't need someone else to feel strong. Our worthiness isn't tied to whether or not we're in a relationship or have the most friends or are the center of attention. Worthiness is inherent. It's our birthright. So what does this look like in action? It looks like showing up for ourselves in the same way we'd show up for someone we love. It's committing to being kind to ourselves even when we're going through a rough patch. It's learning to sit with ourselves in silence and accept who we are without rushing to change or judge or seek approval. It's not always easy, but I promise it's powerful. When we build that inner foundation, we don't become isolated, we become free. Free to connect with others without the fear of losing ourselves. Free to love without needing someone else to define us. Free to be genuinely present without that underlying neediness that whispers, "I'm not enough on my own." The irony is, when we believe that we don't need anyone to feel complete, we're actually able to create deeper, more meaningful connections. Why? Because we're bringing our whole selves into our relationships. We're not asking someone else to carry our sense of self-worth. We're not putting the pressure of our unhealed parts on someone else's shoulders. We're saying, "I am enough. And from this place of wholeness, I can truly be with you." So remember, you already have everything you need to be complete. Yes, relationships add so much richness to our lives, but they're not the source of our worth. You are enough as you are, and you don't need anyone else to make you whole. Self-worth is a concept that we often hear about, but rarely take the time to explore deeply. It's not just a buzzword, it's the cornerstone of our emotional and mental well-being. Many of us grow up with the idea that our worth is something we need to prove, or worse, something that others bestow upon us based on their approval, recognition, or acceptance. But here's the truth, self-worth is not something that comes from the outside. It's an intrinsic part of us, something we're born with and have to learn to embrace and protect from within. The journey to realizing this intrinsic self-worth begins with dismantling the conditioning that tells us otherwise. Society, culture, and sometimes even our loved ones can unconsciously send messages that our value is conditional. Think of the constant reminders to be more successful, more attractive, more productive, more of everything but who we already are. These pressures can distort our sense of self and lead us to believe that self-worth is only possible through certain achievements or external factors. But the problem with tying self-worth to these external things is that they are inherently unstable. Jobs, relationships, physical appearance, and social status are all subject to change, sometimes in ways we can't control. When we hinge our self-worth on them, we're building it on a shaky foundation. To cultivate self-worth from within, we must start by understanding that worthiness is not a result of what we do or have, but of who we inherently are. This can be a tough concept to internalize because it requires us to redefine how we see ourselves and our place in the world. It's easy to conflate our worth with our accomplishments because society praises achievement and success. But worthiness isn't earned, it's inherent. It doesn't come from accolades, wealth, or approval from others. These things can certainly feel validating, but they aren't sustainable sources of worth. True self-worth is a quiet, unshakable belief that we matter, not because of what we've done, but simply because we exist. Building this kind of self-worth starts with self-acceptance. Often we think of self-acceptance as a passive process, but it's an active choice that requires compassion and patience. It means being willing to see ourselves fully, flaws, mistakes, and all, without letting them define us or dictate how we treat ourselves. When we're able to do this, we start to realize that our worth isn't diminished by our imperfections. In fact, recognizing and embracing our vulnerabilities is a key part of cultivating a stable sense of self-worth. It's an act of courage to accept ourselves in a world that constantly tells us we need to be better or more. An essential aspect of this process is learning to let go of the need for external validation. This doesn't mean we don't appreciate compliments or feedback, but it does mean we don't rely on them to feel whole. When we chase validation, we're essentially handing over the keys to our self-worth, letting others control how we see ourselves. This can lead to a cycle of constant seeking, where we're never quite satisfied because our sense of worth is only as stable as others' opinions. By letting go of the need for validation, we reclaim our self-worth and allow it to be rooted in something much more solid, our own acceptance and belief in ourselves. Cultivating self-worth also requires self-compassion. Many of us are far more compassionate toward others than we are toward ourselves. When a friend or loved one makes a mistake, we often encourage them, tell them it's okay, and remind them of their strengths. But when it's us in that position, we can be incredibly harsh, criticizing ourselves in ways we'd never consider speaking to someone else. Learning to extend that same compassion to ourselves is a critical part of building a strong foundation of self-worth. Self-compassion doesn't mean excusing our mistakes or ignoring areas where we can improve. It means treating ourselves with kindness and understanding, even when we fall short. It's recognizing that being human means being imperfect, and our worth is not diminished by that imperfection. As we begin to cultivate self-worth from within, we notice a shift in how we interact with the world. Our relationships become healthier because we're no longer looking for others to complete us or validate us. We're able to approach challenges with greater resilience because we're no longer afraid that failure means we're unworthy. And perhaps most importantly, we find a sense of peace that comes from knowing our worth isn't at the mercy of outside forces. This doesn't mean that life becomes easy or that we'll never feel hurt by others' opinions or actions, but it does mean that our core remains steady and intact, no matter what's happening around us. In learning to recognize and embrace our inherent self-worth, we gain the freedom to live authentically. We can be ourselves, pursue our passions, and take risks without fear that our failures or setbacks will somehow make us less. When our self-worth comes from within, we're no longer chasing a moving target, always trying to prove ourselves or win approval. Instead, we're grounded, resilient, and able to navigate life with a sense of calm confidence. This is the power of self-worth, and it's something no one can give to us or take away. The idea that we are already complete is simple yet powerful, and it challenges a lot of the conditioning we receive from a young age. From society, family, media, and even our internal dialogue, we get messages that reinforce a sense of lack, as if we are missing something vital to make us whole. We're told that if we just had a little more of this or could do a little more of that, then we'd be good enough, then we'd be complete. But in reality, completeness is not something that exists outside of us. It's not something we can find through external achievements, possessions, or relationships. Instead, it's a quality that already lives within us. It's simply waiting for us to recognize and embrace it. Our journey to this realization starts by examining the ways in which we're often convinced that we are somehow lacking. Think about how success is portrayed in our culture. We see images of wealth, status, beauty, and material abundance held up as the ultimate goals, the things that will supposedly make us feel whole and satisfied. We may even believe that finding the perfect partner or achieving the perfect career will finally make us feel enough. But the problem with this approach is that it implies that our sense of wholeness is always just around the corner, forever just out of reach. When we achieve one milestone, there's always another waiting, keeping us in a constant cycle of striving without true fulfillment. A critical part of breaking this cycle is to understand that our completeness isn't dependent on external circumstances. No amount of success, beauty, money, or status will ever truly make us whole, because these things are impermanent. They are outside of us, and they can change or disappear. If we base our sense of completeness on them, we're building on an unstable foundation, constantly needing more to feel satisfied. This approach also robs us of our power, as it places our happiness and fulfillment at the mercy of things we may not fully control. When we hinge our worth and wholeness on external factors, we risk losing our sense of self whenever those factors shift. To embrace the truth of our own completeness, we need to look inward rather than outward. This involves recognizing that wholeness is not about perfection or having everything figured out. It's not about eliminating flaws, mistakes, or struggles. Instead, it's about understanding that these experiences and qualities are part of what makes us human, and they do not diminish our inherent worth. Being whole doesn't mean being flawless, it means being complete in our humanity, with all our strengths, weaknesses, hopes, fears, and dreams. It means realizing that we're enough just as we are. This realization can be transformative because it allows us to move through life with a greater sense of peace and self-acceptance. When we understand that we are already complete, we stop looking to others or to things outside of ourselves to fill a perceived void. We no longer need to find a partner to feel validated, achieve a certain level of success to feel worthy, or change our appearance to feel attractive. These things may still bring joy, fulfillment, or growth, but they don't define our sense of self-worth. By recognizing our completeness, we empower ourselves to pursue our goals, not out of a need to prove something, but from a genuine desire for growth and self-expression. Living from a place of inner completeness also changes the way we relate to others. Often we enter relationships with a sense of neediness or dependency, expecting another person to make us feel complete. This can place a heavy burden on the relationship as we start to rely on someone else for our emotional security. But when we recognize that we're already whole, we approach relationships from a place of fullness, not emptiness. We're able to connect with others in a more authentic, healthy way without expecting them to fill a void that they ultimately can't. Relationships then become a space for growth, joy, and companionship rather than a means of fulfilling our unmet needs. When we stop chasing external symbols of completeness, we also free ourselves to live more authentically. Without the pressure to prove our worth or fix ourselves, we can pursue what genuinely brings us joy and aligns with our values. This shift allows us to let go of comparison, competition, and the constant measuring up to others, because we understand that our worth is not contingent on being better than someone else. We can celebrate our unique gifts and pursue our own paths, confident that we are enough just as we are. This inner sense of completeness can become a source of resilience as well. Life inevitably brings challenges, setbacks, and losses. When our sense of self is grounded in external factors, these difficulties can feel destabilizing, as if our foundation is crumbling. But when we know that we're already complete, we have an inner anchor that allows us to weather life's storms with greater stability. We may feel hurt, disappointed, or even heartbroken, but we don't lose ourselves in the process. Instead, we carry an unshakable belief in our own worth and resilience. Embracing our completeness is an act of self-love. It's a commitment to seeing ourselves not as projects to be fixed or problems to be solved, but as whole beings deserving of respect and care. It's a reminder that we are and always have been enough. This doesn't mean that growth or change is unnecessary, but rather that it is a journey we undertake from a place of wholeness rather than lack. Embracing our own completeness allows us to live more freely, connect more deeply, and experience life with a genuine sense of fulfillment and peace. Building an inner foundation is a transformative process that goes beyond external validation or temporary confidence boosts. It's about creating a strong, stable sense of self from within. This inner foundation becomes our anchor, allowing us to navigate life's ups and downs without losing our sense of self-worth or direction. While it may sound simple, establishing this inner foundation requires consistent self-compassion, patience, and a commitment to self-acceptance, especially in moments when we feel anything but stable. Many people rely on external sources to bolster their self-esteem or sense of worth, such as relationships, achievements, or even social media. We might receive praise, feel validated by others' approval, or gain confidence from success. While these experiences can feel gratifying, they're also temporary and external, often dependent on factors we cannot fully control. Relying on them as primary sources of self-worth can leave us vulnerable to disappointment when those sources shift or disappear. If we allow external factors to define our value, we are essentially building our lives on a foundation of sand, one that may crumble at any moment. This is why cultivating a strong inner foundation is so essential. It's a way of finding security and stability within ourselves, regardless of external circumstances. Creating this inner foundation starts with the practice of self-acceptance, which is, in essence, embracing all parts of ourselves, not just the parts we feel proud of or the qualities others approve of. Self-acceptance isn't about thinking we're perfect or ignoring areas where we can improve. Rather, it's about acknowledging ourselves as whole human beings with strengths, weaknesses, successes, and failures. By doing this, we learn to see ourselves with compassion rather than judgment and treat ourselves as we would a close friend. This foundation of self-acceptance becomes a steady ground on which we can stand, even during times of difficulty or self-doubt. However, self-acceptance doesn't happen overnight. It's a continual practice. It requires a conscious choice to let go of negative self-talk, to challenge the inner critic, and to allow ourselves to be imperfect without shame. When we hold ourselves to impossible standards, believing that we must be flawless or achieve certain benchmarks to feel worthy, we inadvertently undermine our own foundation. Self-acceptance, then, is about being kind to ourselves, embracing our humanity, and resisting the temptation to judge ourselves harshly. Each time we choose self-acceptance, we reinforce our inner foundation, building a solid base that isn't swayed by external forces or the opinions of others. Another critical aspect of creating a strong inner foundation is cultivating a sense of purpose or meaning in our lives that isn't dependent on validation or external success. Finding purpose doesn't necessarily mean identifying one specific life goal. Rather, it's about understanding what truly matters to us, what lights us up, and what aligns with our values. By connecting with our purpose, we give ourselves a source of motivation and resilience that comes from within. This sense of purpose becomes a guiding force, something that reminds us why we are on our path, even when obstacles arise. When our actions align with our values and purpose, we feel a sense of authenticity that strengthens our inner foundation, enabling us to navigate challenges without feeling lost or disconnected. Building an inner foundation also involves learning to trust ourselves. Self-trust means having faith in our own judgment, in our ability to make decisions, and in our capacity to learn from our experiences. Often, people look to others for guidance, approval, or advice, feeling uncertain about their own choices. While seeking advice can be helpful, over-reliance on others' opinions can erode our inner foundation, leaving us feeling as if we can't trust ourselves. Developing self-trust means listening to our intuition, recognizing our own strengths, and believing in our resilience, even in moments of uncertainty. Each time we act from a place of self-trust, we reinforce the foundation that supports us, giving ourselves the confidence to face life's challenges with courage. An inner foundation is also strengthened by practicing resilience, the ability to bounce back from setbacks and adapt to change. Life is unpredictable, and setbacks are inevitable. However, when we have a strong inner foundation, we don't see failures or disappointments as reflections of our worth. Instead, we view them as opportunities for growth. Building resilience involves acknowledging that we have the strength to withstand difficult times and that setbacks do not define us. Each time we encounter a challenge and overcome it, we reinforce our inner foundation and strengthen our capacity to face the next obstacle with even greater confidence. Resilience is a reminder that, despite the struggles we may face, our worth remains intact. Building an inner foundation gives us a sense of stability, peace, and confidence that external factors cannot provide. It frees us from the need to constantly seek approval, compare ourselves to others, or chase validation. Instead, we become grounded in our own values, strengths, and self-worth. This inner stability becomes a kind of freedom, allowing us to move through life with authenticity and self-assurance. When we rely on ourselves for validation and worth, we become less vulnerable to the fluctuations of external circumstances. Whether we succeed or fail, gain approval or face criticism, our foundation remains solid, grounded in self-acceptance, purpose, self-trust, and resilience. Building an inner foundation is not about isolating ourselves from others or refusing help, but rather about creating a reliable source of strength within ourselves. It is about knowing that, no matter what happens, we have a place to stand, a foundation that will support us through life's inevitable highs and lows. In cultivating this inner foundation, we empower ourselves to live with a quiet confidence, a resilience that no one else can give or take away. It becomes the bedrock of a fulfilling life, one built not on the shifting sands of external validation, but on the unwavering ground of our own self-worth and inner strength. Knowing that we don't need anyone to define us is a liberating realization that can profoundly impact our lives and relationships. Often we go through life with the belief that our worth is somehow tied to the validation, approval, or acceptance of others. We might not even be fully conscious of this, but it can shape how we act, think, and engage with the world. We look to our friends, family, and partners to affirm who we are, making them unwitting gatekeepers of our self-worth. This dependency on external validation often leads us to suppress parts of ourselves, conform to others' expectations, or feel devastated when we don't receive the recognition we hope for. However, when we understand that we don't need anyone to validate our existence, we are free to live authentically, to define ourselves on our own terms, and to find a deeper, more genuine connection with others. One of the first steps toward internalizing this freedom is letting go of the need for others' approval. It's natural to want to be liked and appreciated. After all, we are social beings. But when our sense of identity is tied to others' opinions of us, we lose our inner stability. For example, if we derive our sense of worth primarily from being seen as successful, kind, or attractive by others, then any change in those perceptions can leave us feeling adrift, questioning our value. To free ourselves from this, we need to build an inner confidence that does not waver with others' opinions. This doesn't mean disregarding constructive feedback or becoming self-centered. It simply means that our core self-image isn't easily swayed. We recognize our strengths, accept our flaws, and know our own value, whether others recognize it or not. Living without the need for external validation allows us to embrace authenticity. Authenticity means showing up as our true selves, expressing our thoughts, feelings, and values openly without fear of judgment. It means being honest about who we are, even if it risks disapproval or misunderstanding. When we no longer rely on others to define us, we can finally stop wearing masks or filtering ourselves to fit into preconceived boxes. This authenticity creates a sense of inner peace, because we are no longer divided between who we are and who we think others want us to be. Instead, we can live with integrity, aligned with our own values and beliefs. The paradox here is that when we embrace this authenticity, we often find that others respect and connect with us on a deeper level because they can sense our sincerity and self-assuredness. Another powerful benefit of realizing we don't need anyone to define us is the freedom to establish healthy boundaries. When we feel that our self-worth is dependent on others, we may find it difficult to say no, fearing that it will lead to rejection or disappointment. We might overextend ourselves, take on too many responsibilities, or even tolerate disrespectful behavior to avoid conflict or disapproval. But when we understand our value and embrace the fact that it doesn't hinge on others' opinions, we can set boundaries that protect our well-being and allow us to engage in relationships from a place of respect. Boundaries are not about shutting people out, they are about creating a safe space where we can flourish and nurture healthy, balanced relationships. In this journey towards self-definition, we also learn to value solitude and introspection. Many people are uncomfortable with being alone because they rely on external interactions to feel validated or purposeful. But solitude is a space where we can connect with ourselves, reflect on our values, and cultivate inner peace. Embracing solitude doesn't mean isolating ourselves, it means developing a comfort with our own company, where we can reconnect with our thoughts and emotions without the noise of others' opinions. Through this practice, we build an internal compass, a sense of direction that is not dependent on others' approval. We become grounded in who we are, which ironically makes us more open and resilient in our connections with others, because we're no longer coming from a place of need. When we reach a place where we no longer need others to define us, we're able to enter relationships from a position of strength rather than dependency. This shift transforms the quality of our connections. Rather than looking to a partner or friend to complete us or fill a void, we're able to share our lives with them from a place of fullness. Relationships become about companionship, mutual respect, and growth rather than filling an emotional gap. We become better listeners, more empathetic, and more supportive because we're not distracted by our own need for validation. Instead, we can be present with others, genuinely engaging in the relationship and offering support without hidden agendas or insecurities. This self-assurance also allows us to handle rejection and criticism with resilience. When we know our worth, we're less likely to internalize others' negative opinions. Criticism becomes a tool for growth rather than a blow to our self-esteem. We understand that not everyone will see or appreciate our value, and that's okay. This resilience to criticism doesn't make us unfeeling or dismissive, rather, it gives us the ability to consider feedback without letting it shake our self-image. We are open to growth but grounded in our worth. Realizing that we don't need anyone to define us empowers us to live authentically, love deeply, and build stronger connections without losing ourselves in the process. It's about finding a steady, unwavering sense of self that can withstand life's challenges and others' opinions. This internal stability allows us to experience life from a place of inner confidence, freeing us from the limitations that come with constantly seeking validation. We become free to pursue our own path, create meaningful connections, and live with a sense of fulfillment that arises from within. Letting go of comparison is one of the most liberating actions we can take for our own well-being. In today's world, where social media, work environments, and even casual conversations can inadvertently promote competition, comparison can feel almost unavoidable. It often starts innocently admiring a friend's achievement, noticing a colleague's promotion, or scrolling through carefully curated social media posts. But soon, it can spiral into a deeper, more pervasive feeling of inadequacy, leading us to wonder if we measure up. The challenge with comparison is that it erodes our self-worth from the inside out, shifting our focus from our own growth and values to constantly measuring ourselves against others. By letting go of comparison, we allow ourselves the freedom to embrace our own unique path, unburdened by the pressures of trying to keep up with everyone else. Comparison is a natural human tendency rooted in our desire to belong and gauge our progress. However, while some forms of comparison can be motivating, chronic comparison often creates a mindset where we're never quite satisfied. When we constantly measure ourselves against others, it's easy to lose sight of our own journey and achievements. Instead of celebrating who we are and what we've accomplished, we focus on perceived deficiencies, believing that we'll only be enough if we reach certain benchmarks that others have set. This can lead to a sense of unworthiness and dissatisfaction, as there will always be someone who appears to be doing better in one way or another. The irony is that while we're comparing ourselves to others, they might be comparing themselves to us, illustrating how pervasive and counterproductive this habit can be. One of the key steps to letting go of comparison is shifting our perspective to recognize our unique strengths, values, and purpose. No two people are on the same path, and each of us has a different set of experiences, skills, and goals that shape who we are. Rather than viewing someone else's success as a measure of our own inadequacy, we can choose to celebrate their accomplishments while staying focused on our own journey. By reframing our mindset, we allow ourselves to see that everyone's path is different, and what's meaningful or fulfilling for one person might not align with our own dreams and values. This shift in focus helps us to appreciate our individuality, enabling us to set our own standards rather than trying to match someone else's. Letting go of comparison also involves cultivating self-compassion. Often we are our harshest critics, setting unrealistic expectations and then feeling inadequate when we don't meet them. But practicing self-compassion allows us to accept ourselves with kindness, acknowledging that we are enough, regardless of what others are doing. Self-compassion helps us to embrace our imperfections, understanding that flaws and setbacks are natural parts of growth. When we stop holding ourselves to impossible standards, we create a healthier, more sustainable foundation for self-worth, one that is not threatened by others' achievements or milestones. Another powerful way to release the grip of comparison is to focus on personal growth and celebrate our own progress. When we're constantly looking outward, we miss the opportunity to appreciate how far we've come and the efforts we've put into our own journey. Personal growth is not about meeting external milestones, but about becoming the best version of ourselves according to our own values. Tracking our progress, recognizing the obstacles we've overcome, and appreciating our unique path allows us to build confidence from within. When we take ownership of our journey, we can celebrate others' successes without feeling diminished because we're secure in the knowledge of our own growth and achievements. Mindfulness is also an invaluable tool in letting go of comparison. When we're mindful, we're fully present in the moment, not dwelling on what others are doing or where we think we should be. Mindfulness helps us to shift our focus back to ourselves, noticing when comparison arises and gently guiding our attention back to our own goals, values, and experiences. By practicing mindfulness, we develop an awareness that allows us to catch comparison before it spirals into feelings of inadequacy or self-doubt. This presence helps us to recognize that our worth is not contingent on external achievements or validation, but is rooted in our inherent value as individuals. Another helpful strategy is gratitude. Practicing gratitude allows us to focus on what we have rather than what we lack. When we feel grateful for our own lives, talents, and opportunities, we become less likely to focus on what others have that we don't. Gratitude shifts our mindset from scarcity to abundance, helping us to recognize and appreciate the unique blessings in our lives. By focusing on what we have rather than what we think we're missing, we reinforce a sense of contentment and satisfaction, which in turn diminishes the urge to compare ourselves to others. This practice of gratitude fosters a feeling of inner peace, allowing us to value our own lives without constantly measuring them against someone else's. Ultimately, letting go of comparison is about trusting our own path and realizing that we are enough just as we are. It's about finding contentment and purpose in our own lives, knowing that our worth isn't tied to how we stack up against others. When we let go of comparison, we reclaim our power, allowing ourselves to live authentically and confidently. We begin to see that our journey is uniquely ours, shaped by our own experiences, values, and dreams. This sense of autonomy and self-assurance enables us to live with a greater sense of peace and fulfillment, no longer feeling the need to measure our lives against others. By embracing our individuality, practicing self-compassion, focusing on our personal growth, and cultivating mindfulness and gratitude, we can break free from the cycle of comparison. We can celebrate the success of others without feeling it diminishes our own worth. And, perhaps most importantly, we learn to trust that our unique journey is enough. When we let go of comparison, we create space to honor our own lives, allowing ourselves to live fully and confidently, anchored in our own worth and purpose. Accepting help without feeling weak is a transformative act that allows us to connect with others authentically, deepen our resilience, and recognize the importance of community in our lives. Many people struggle with this concept because culturally we often equate strength with self-sufficiency. We may believe that being strong means handling everything on our own, tackling our challenges in isolation, and never appearing vulnerable. However, this mindset can lead to unnecessary hardship, isolation, and burnout. In reality, allowing ourselves to receive help isn't a sign of weakness, it's an acknowledgement of our humanity and a recognition that we are stronger when we can lean on each other. Accepting help, then, becomes an empowering act that opens the door to support, collaboration, and shared growth. One of the core reasons people find it difficult to accept help is the belief that doing so will make them appear incapable or dependent. This belief often stems from the idea that we must earn our worth by handling all aspects of life on our own. However, no one is truly self-sufficient, nor were we meant to be. Throughout history, human survival has depended on collaboration and mutual aid. We have always lived in communities where each person's skills, support, and contributions help the group as a whole to thrive. Recognizing that needing others as part of our human experience allows us to see that receiving help is a natural and necessary part of life, not a reflection of weakness. Accepting help can also be challenging because it involves vulnerability. When we reach out to others or accept their assistance, we are essentially revealing that we cannot do everything alone and that we too face limitations. This vulnerability can be intimidating, as it makes us feel exposed. However, vulnerability is often where true connection is born. When we allow ourselves to be open, others can relate to us more deeply. They see that we too are human with our own struggles and challenges. This shared vulnerability fosters empathy and compassion, both for ourselves and for others. When we allow ourselves to receive help, we are not only giving ourselves support, but also creating a bridge for genuine connection with those around us. Allowing others to help us can also be a form of respect for their skills, experiences, and desire to contribute. Often, people want to help because it gives them a sense of purpose and fulfillment. Just as we may feel good about lending a hand, others feel the same way. By accepting help, we honor the gifts and strengths of those around us, acknowledging that they have something valuable to offer. This exchange fosters a mutual sense of appreciation and respect, where we recognize that each of us has something unique to bring to the table. Rather than seeing ourselves as lesser for accepting help, we come to see it as an opportunity for collaboration and shared growth. An important aspect of learning to accept help is understanding that our worth isn't tied to what we can accomplish alone. In a culture that often glorifies independence and self-reliance, we can start to believe that being worthy means doing everything on our own. But self-worth isn't about independence, it's about recognizing our inherent value, regardless of whether we're able to handle everything solo. Embracing this truth allows us to accept help without feeling diminished. When we let go of the belief that we have to prove ourselves by going it alone, we open ourselves to the richness of support, allowing ourselves to grow and succeed in ways we might not be able to if we insisted on doing everything ourselves. Accepting help also strengthens resilience. When we allow others to support us, we build a network of resources that can help us navigate difficult times. Life is unpredictable and challenges can arise that we simply aren't equipped to handle alone. By fostering connections and welcoming assistance, we build a foundation of support that bolsters our resilience, providing us with the resources, perspectives, and strength we need to face adversity. In this way, accepting help doesn't weaken us, it fortifies us, preparing us for the inevitable ups and downs of life. Moreover, accepting help can inspire a cycle of generosity. When we allow others to support us, we experience firsthand the power of community and connection. This experience often encourages us to pay it forward, sharing our own resources and skills with others in need. It's a beautiful cycle where everyone benefits. By accepting help, we become more open to helping others, creating a ripple effect of support and compassion. Rather than isolating ourselves in our struggles, we become part of a larger community of mutual aid, where everyone feels valued and supported. It's also worth noting that learning to accept help can improve our mental and emotional well-being. When we insist on handling everything ourselves, we risk burnout, stress, and even resentment. The pressure to be strong in isolation can lead to feelings of loneliness and frustration, as we may feel overwhelmed by challenges that could be alleviated with support. By allowing ourselves to receive help, we reduce the burden on our own shoulders, finding relief and even joy in shared efforts. This support system gives us the space to recharge, find balance, and approach life's challenges with renewed energy and perspective. Ultimately, accepting help without feeling weak is about redefining what it means to be strong. Strength is not the absence of vulnerability, nor is it the ability to shoulder every burden alone. True strength lies in the courage to embrace our humanity, to acknowledge that we all need each other, and to accept support when we need it. By allowing ourselves to receive help, we honor our interconnectedness, deepen our resilience, and strengthen the bonds that make us whole. In doing so, we cultivate a life rich in compassion, support, and shared growth, reminding ourselves that accepting help is, in fact, a profound act of strength.